and welcome to the Cold Coffee Club, a podcast brought to you by Houston Moms. We're here to give you a little bit of that mom-to-mom connection, fun, and conversation amidst all the chaos. Join us as we take a break from doing all the things and explore the wide spectrum of this crazy motherhood role. We'll interview fun guests, talk about cool grown-up topics, laugh, share, and grow together. So go ahead, reheat that coffee, and put your feet up. Here we go.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Cold Coffee Club. I'm so excited to dig into this topic today with Tiffany Harris. She and I are going to chat about parenting and what that looks like as far as do as I say, not as I do. I know that there are a lot of things we teach our children, like moderating their screen time, things like that, where we might not be doing the same thing for ourselves. So Tiffany and I are going to chat about that and ways to kind of combat that. It's hard. So she and I are going to ping pong some ideas on how to find some balance, because as adults, we don't always want to have those rules that we had while we were kids, but also realizing that we are our children's first teacher. We'll get into that after I spill some tea. So my win this week is that I have mentioned before, I am the worst plant parent ever. I cannot keep plants alive. I've heard that succulents and cacti are foolproof. I have killed both. So it is challenging for me, but I decided to jump back into it again. My youngest and I went plant shopping, and so far, so good. I've had them for a week, so, who knows? But I am holding on to hope. I'm hoping I learn something this time around. I also learned, I spoke with someone at a nursery nearby, and they were explaining to me like, hey, Houston is humid. You do not need to water your plants as much as you think you do. I think that might have been part of the problem. So I am watering them a lot less. I am fighting the urge to keep watering them. I feel like they're thirsty, but I'm trying. So hopefully these plants make it. I spent solid money and time trying to fill my house with plants. So we'll see what happens. So I have a great fail to have. I have too many books. I have too many books in my audiobook library. I have too many books in my house that I need to work my way through. And I'm loving that I have them piling up a little bit because it's encouraging me to go ahead and keep reading. I know I've mentioned the app Libby that is connected to your local library. That is a quick and easy way to check out audiobooks, to check out books in your tablet or your phone. And I keep getting alerts like your hold is ready. Here's another book. And I have to keep suspending holds because I have like 4 books checked out right now and 14 days to read them. This is a great problem to have. And I am really trying to push myself to read as much as possible. I know that I start strong typically at the beginning of the year, and then I kind of winnow down a little bit, but I have great momentum right now. I think I'm up to 7 books so far this year. And I love that. So that is my fail, that I just have too many books. And that's a great fail to have. For my cream and sugar this week, I'm going to recommend a TikTok account that is giving me so much joy. I laugh hysterically. It's embarrassing how relatable most of these TikToks are, and they're just hilarious. Her name is Yolinda Dong, so it's YOLENDADONG. And I will put that in our show notes. She is hilarious. And she has been my favorite TikToker for the last few weeks. And if you are needing something to laugh about on TikTok, she's the one. I find a lot of TikTokers who are younger, who it's like, oh, that was relatable back when I was 20. That's funny. But she's like a full-grown up. And she makes me laugh. And I'm like, yep, I feel all of that. I love it. Thank you.
Hey Houston, I want to hear from you. Would you like to be a guest on the Cold Coffee Club? Send me a message at thecoldcoffeeclubhm@gmail.com. That's thecoldcoffeeclubhm, like Houston Moms, @gmail.com. Can't wait to hear from you.
All right. I feel like all of us have had the mental thought of do as I say, not as I do. At some point in our parenting journey, we know that we are not always being the best role models and best examples for our children all the time, but we are constantly telling them to do certain things that might not be very easy for us to do. So I'm joined with Tiffany Harris today, and she and I are going to dig into some of the things we are really trying to instill in our children that we don't always do ourselves. So for starters, I know that one thing I struggle with myself is teaching my children to stick to a strict screen time schedule and like, hey, we're going to limit this and this is just how it's going to be. But then also realizing I'm on my phone damn near 24/7.
Yes. Yes.
So what are you dealing with on that end? Like, how do you kind of find that balance for them? Have your kids ever called you out on it?
They have.
Yeah.
They have. And there's always this level of it's not fair kind of thing, or they'll call my husband out particularly because he actually kind of walks around with his like his buds in his ears or with his phone always in his hand. So I think they see it with me. And they struggle sometimes when I'm like watching a clip or something like that, and then I'm not as attentive, and they're trying to get my attention.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that I'm doing it for decompression, relaxation. But yeah, I've had to get really better. Like I have to get better with it because they do have a very strict kind of rule, how our rules with them on screen time. And so like I was telling you, like podcasts have been a really good way of around some of that too, as listening to podcasts with them, particularly in the car. So I really, it's a struggle. Like even during the week, what we've said, which we're not at all good at, like we'll do it for a month.
Yeah.
Like no TV day.
Yeah. It's and then it's almost punishment for you.
It is punishment for us, sort of. Like I could do other things. I could read, I could clean up, I could write. Like there's just a ton of other things that I should be doing and I just don't do.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that maybe as we head into the spring, head into the summer, like we've said we would do it a lot. We wanted to do it in the summer because they're home a little bit more. There's not as much good things on TV anyway during the summer. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
It is always a struggle though.
Yeah. I also am starting to realize just how much is on my phone. And so I will go out of my way to tell my children, like, yes, I'm on my phone, but I'm checking my bank account.
Yeah, I'm paying bills.
I'm not having fun. I'm handling business. I'm checking an email from your teacher. I get 1,900 emails a day from your teachers. I'm just checking to see if it's like an emergency. Do you need something? What list do I need to sign up for? What thing do I need to donate to your class? Like I'm doing things. I'm not, watching shows or whatever.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, and that's the other thing is that they're now also picking up on the fact that more can be done on your phone. Like I was just telling my husband, my son now, he asked Siri something, which I thought was kind of an odd request, but she responded, like the AI or whatever it is, responded with an answer. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's starting to pick up on the fact that he can just say, Siri, what is?
Yes.
Or tell me about, and it'll respond with an answer. So that was a little bit crazy to me when that happened the other day. So yeah.
What's another thing you have been working on teaching your children that maybe you have a hard time doing yourself?
So I'm gonna just tell the world, cussing. I'm a huge. My husband won't let me do it as much as I used to.
Yeah.
And so for the audience, I don't mean that there's consequences if I do.
Right.
But in terms of we talked about this even before we had kids, and even when I was pregnant in the early years, is that I had a mouth that I could just That was just
Yep.
my thing.
Mhm.
And he grew up in a household where he rarely ever heard it. His mother
Sure.
was a pastor. She was, very much into the church. So he said he can count the number of times he heard cussing. And I was
Mhm.
like, well, see, so that's not my experience.
Right. Mine either. But it
That's
is an
not my
absolute game changer when you hear those words coming from that cute little face
Oh
that
my
you created.
gosh.
It is totally different.
So story time,
Mhm.
another story time. My daughter says to me yesterday, she's like, Mom, I almost cussed at school today. And I was like, now for her, cussing could mean a couple different things.
Mhm.
So she's even attributed like not good words
Mhm.
with cussing.
Yeah.
So, I won't say them because they are not good words.
Right.
Um, but this was not this was definitely a cuss word she was gonna say to her. It starts with F.
All right.
And I said, and my husband was like, he's like, well, what was it? I said, no, no, no. Like these are not your businesses.
Right. Right.
'Cause he's a lot more strict about it than
Mhm.
I mean, they don't cuss around me. It's not a
Right.
thing that I accept, but I don't think it's the end of the world that they know the
Sure.
words and that they know how to use them correctly. Because
Mhm.
again, it's all about context. Like if you're
Yes.
just spitting off words just to be spitting off words, then that's where I have
Right.
a problem.
Right.
I said, "What happened?" And she said she was struggling with, like, something at school, so she was gonna say it kinda to herself. She said, "I caught myself." I said, "Well, Caliana, dear, baby, sweetheart, let's find other words to
Yes.
use that,
Yes.
can communicate that same level of
Sure.
frustration. Darn it,
Yeah.
dang it."
And it's a fine
Rats was one of my favorites. That's what I
I don't
used to
think
say
I've
when I was
ever heard anyone say rats in real
Oh
life.
my gosh, my mom used to say it all the time because
Oh
again,
my
like
gosh.
I am a product of my environment.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I love
she
it.
had to switch to rats.
Yeah.
She had to say rats. And so
Yeah.
we used to start saying it when we were little. So I clearly remember saying rats all
Oh
the
my
time.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
So
And it's
yes.
a fine line because you don't want your kids to be just like those kids that are shocked if they ever hear it like,
Right.
what did you say?
Right.
But you also don't want to make it a habit. And I have some conflict with my ex-husband about this. He like has given them like a cussing hour where it's like say all the things you need to say, get it out. And I'm like,
Oh.
can we focus on like it'd be one thing. I'm all about balance. It'd be one thing if like you're great at kind words, you are great at speaking
Yeah.
life into other people, and then you need to just like get that out. You need that cathartic experience. We're struggling being kind. Why are we giving an hour
Right.
saying the ugly words? What, we don't need this. And
Honestly,
that is one guilty pleasure I have on like TikTok is these videos of parents being like, you can say a bad word in the bathroom, say one word. I'm going to shut the door. You're not going to get in trouble. You can say one. And it is the funniest thing watching these kids be like, oh yes, I'm ready.
well, and I didn't find cussing to be very helpful until I was really an adult.
Mhm.
So cussing really is an adult experience
Mhm.
only because like I remember I've had to use the F word is my favorite word. Like I think it's
Oh,
my
yes.
favorite
Oh,
four-letter word in the entire English language.
yes.
I don't know any root of it. I don't know nothing about it, but it is my favorite word. So I've had to use it a couple of very
Mhm.
specific times, and it has communicated a very specific message,
Mhm.
and it has alerted those that I've had to say the word to that there are no more games being played right
Oh,
now.
yes. Yes.
So I really do think it's an adult experience,
Mhm.
kind of like tattoos and
Yeah.
other sex and all those other
Sure.
things. Like so, like
Yes.
I think there are some things that are really should be relegated for the adult life because
Absolutely.
it's that's where it's appropriate.
Yes. I
My
do have
daughter,
to recommend to you, there is a documentary on Netflix that came out in 2021 called The History of Swear Words.
Oh,
Girl,
really?
you need to watch it. It is so Nicolas Cage
Oh.
like narrates it, and it is so funny, but it literally breaks down the etymology of all these cuss words and where they came from, what they meant at the time, what they mean now. It is so much fun.
Oh, we're going out of town, so we need some Netflix. So
Yep.
the etymology, and what is it called?
The history of swear words.
The history of swear words.
Yes.
I am going to definitely
Yes,
watch that
do
while
it.
we are on. Yes. Because then, I'll be watching it with my husband and he
Mhm.
has some feelings about it.
Mhm.
But again, he just didn't grow up with it and he doesn't
Sure.
say them very
Yeah.
often. But my grandfather was a cusser, my
Mhm.
daddy was a cusser, my
Yep.
mama was a cusser. There's just no, but my son, on the other hand, he does not use them. He does not
Mhm.
say them. My daughter, on the other hand, has been saying them since she
She's
was about
ready.
2. I
I
don't
love
even,
her.
and she uses them correctly, which is
Oh,
also
yes.
more awesome. At 2, she
Yes,
says.
ma'am.
I was like, girl, you don't even know words. What are you talking about saying these words?
My
Her
youngest was
nanny
like
was
that.
you said what?
My youngest was like that, and he
I
knew the context, and he was the only one, just the little toddler chasing after everybody, just saying all the words. I'm like, oh man.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yep. I will say before I jump into my next one, I will say that I have to constantly fight the urge between, screen time and cussing, things like that. I have to fight the urge of telling my children, I'm an adult. Like I can
Yeah,
do this.
exactly.
I pay the bills. I will use my
Yeah.
phone as much as I want to. I paid for it. I have to fight that urge because it's not helping them learn like
Exactly.
what the operation is, the understanding. And I don't want it just to be just like I don't want to be one of those parents. It's like, because I said so. Well, that's not helping me.
Yeah.
So I try to help them understand, like, because I need to do these things, or because, I know that cussing might not be the best choice in the world. I have an English degree. I should be able to find other words to use that will relay the information that I need to. But sometimes they're not as efficient and effective. And there's not that like, ooh, when you say the F word, there is like vitriol behind it. Like,
there is
oh,
meaning.
you
There is
felt
meaning.
it. And so
you're right.
saying a different word is not always going to get that effect. But, I can because I'm an adult. You can make the choice when you're an adult. If you want to say those words and you are willing to accept the consequences that come with that, because you can't just say it to anybody. You can't just throw that around. So if you're willing to accept the consequences, that's on you when you're an adult.
Yeah.
You do that.
Yep.
One thing I do struggle with my children, it's very much a do as I say, not as I do. They need to understand that sometimes as an adult, white lies are necessary.
Oh, I didn't have that on my list.
Yes. Sometimes you have to play nice. If your boss asks you a question and you have to kind of sort of agree, or, like my job is on the line here, or, sometimes you might have to do a little white lie to get through.
Yes.
And sometimes they've called me out like, well, that's not 100% true. And I'm like, okay, I understand. Or, navigating an ex-husband. Sometimes you have to play nice. Yes. And you might not be giving the full information. You might not be giving the full truth. Sometimes it's a little necessary just to smooth sail it. And I have always told my children, we don't keep secrets. That is one thing. If another adult told my children, don't tell your mom this or whatever, that's a problem. But also when navigating, for example, co-parenting, I have told my kids, like, you are entitled to tell your dad any and everything. Right. But sometimes, and I feel like withholding information is a way of lying. And so sometimes I don't tell him every detail of everything that's happening in my house. Dad doesn't need to know that. And we go back to the acronym of THINK. Like, is it truthful? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And so sometimes we land on is it necessary for dad to know every detail of, well, mom said this, mom didn't like this, and it's not necessary. And so teaching them that having tact and really thinking about the effect that some of your words might have, that information isn't always needed.
Yeah. It's interesting 'cause my daughter did something like that with with my son,
Mhm.
and she was saying something, and she's a very like, "But it's true." And I said, "But
Right.
was it necessary?
Right.
Were you being kind? Like you said,
Mhm.
were you being kind in that moment?
Mhm.
Did it make him feel good? If the answer to that is
Mhm.
no, then step back, fall back in that moment."
Mhm. Yes. Yes. There was a point where one of my kids drew a picture and I was like, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. And my oldest was like, Mom, that wasn't great. Why did you say it was great? And I'm like, your brother put a lot of effort into this and it was an
Yeah.
improvement to what he used to do. So it
Right.
was great. And so he doesn't understand like saying something that might, make someone feel good, even if it's not amazing. No, it's not the best thing I've ever seen in my life, but it was great for you. Awesome.
Yeah.
So just learning how to make those choices. It might seem
Yeah.
like a white lie, but sometimes it's like, hey, I want to inspire this person. I want them to keep going. I want them to feel good. Sometimes it just kind of comes with the territory and
Yeah.
they're trying to figure out like, well, when is this okay? Am I allowed to say this is nice when I think it's ugly? If your hair
Yeah.
looks stupid, can I say it looks stupid? I'm like, let's not. You don't need to. It's not necessary. Oh
Yeah. And
God.
that is difficult to navigate. I
Mhm.
mean, it really is. I feel like
Yeah.
though you learn it in friendships because
Yes. Yep. Yep.
sometimes you say things to your friends that you don't want that aren't, and that's what I honestly, that's what I always bring it back to.
Mhm.
I was, particularly with my daughter, I was like, would you like it if someone said something like that to you?
Exactly.
And I know that
Exactly.
she's very attuned to what feels good to her, feels good inside of her.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to navigate though. It
Yes.
really is.
Yes.
Yeah. I know another one for me.
Mhm.
So again, I'm just an adult.
Mhm.
Is sweets.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
so we 100% limit their sweets.
Mhm.
100%. Like
Yeah.
we can be to the extreme of like sometimes once a week or
Mhm.
just twice a week. They don't drink like just juice and
Yeah.
things like that. So even, I mean, they didn't have like, I don't know that they've ever had pop, number one, but
Mhm.
I don't know, but we didn't even have them drinking juice until they were probably 4 years old.
Yep.
I don't even think it was 3. But because all they ever drank was water.
Mhm.
Now, mind you, there are days where I need a cookie a day just to get through.
Amen. Amen.
Or my coffee, which is not
Mhm.
coffee, it's a mocha.
Right.
I talked
Right.
about this. Like,
Yep.
it's my coffee habit. I drink wine.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
so
Yes. It's
not the best for
hard.
me.
Right.
I,
Yep. And that's the interesting thing too is my kids will catch on like, well, how come you get to have this and this?
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm done developing. My brain has already done
Right.
everything it's gonna do. You're still growing. I'm done.
And that's a good point. That really is a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's
like we go back to, is it healthy for you? And
right.
everything is about, healthy. And for those that
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I'm tall, so you've met me. I'm like six
Mm-hmm.
feet tall. My husband's over 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you want your growth stunted? Like, we want you to be
Mm-hmm.
as tall and as healthy as possible, both of
Sure.
them. So they
Yeah.
are, and they're not quite yet. So strangely enough, I will eat more I can eat vegetables. My husband loves vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
They are not big onto vegetables. So they
Mm-hmm.
haven't quite caught up to that, which is another
Right.
reason why we try to also balance off the sweets
Sure.
because there's nothing good in that. So
Right. Right. Absolutely. That makes sense. That makes
yeah,
sense.
like even my husband for their snacks for school, like he didn't want to put anything snacky, sugary. And I was like, babe, you're just gonna have to.
Right.
I don't know what else they're not going to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he want. Like, not you can't have nuts at school, but he was
Right.
just trying to have something non-sugary,
Right.
non-sweet.
Right.
And he stuck to it for a while, but they
Yeah.
just, they're growing so fast that they
Yeah.
need that stuff, and it burns off. I
Hmm.
think because it doesn't. That's what I tell him. I'm like, hey, do you see this? Like, are they overweight, or do you
Right.
see
Right.
anything sluggish about them?
Hmm.
But yeah, the sweets thing. And
Yeah.
my husband is a big juice drinker. We don't
Hmm.
let the kids, like I said, have a lot of juice. I'm a sweets person. He
Yeah.
doesn't eat a lot of sweets, but the kids do. So we really try to
Yeah.
balance that.
Yeah. Yeah. What it's all about moderation, I'm finding,
Yes.
and we will dig into like ways to kind of combat these things a little bit. But my last thing is just sharing. My kids are noticing that they have to do their best to
Mm.
share. Not always. I don't make them share in every situation. Or it's like if you have something and you take it to the park, some kid can't just walk up to you and be like, "You need to share. Give it here." No, that's not how we operate here. But in our household, if it's a free for all and you've set it down, it's time to share. Like
Yeah.
you walked away. I don't know what you want me to
Yeah.
tell you, but they're noticing that I don't necessarily have to share my stuff. And I've tried to explain to them but like I first my reaction was but it's mine, and they're like, yeah, some of this stuff is mine. I'm like, okay, what is it that you're
What do they
looking
want
at?
you to share, Ashley?
Exactly. I don't understand. They're like, well, first they wanted me to share my room. They're like, how come you don't just let us come in your room and just be in your room whenever we want to? You should share. And I was like, wait, what? No. So then when they brought that up, I was like, okay, you have your own rooms. You can ask people like, hey, I would like you to leave my room, please. And you can do
Right.
that. And my younger two share a room, but my oldest has his own room. And he's like, I hate when they come in here and they do this and this. And I'm like, you are welcome to close off your room if people aren't respecting your space. You are welcome to say, nope, it's my room, leave. But I have an exercise bike in my room, and I'm like, no, you can't ride it. And they're like, that's not sharing. I'm like, okay, well, this is not safe for you. It's not
Right.
built for your body. So there's my reasoning. It's not safe for you. Or like, I'm trying to look around my room, like what else? Most of the time it's like breakable stuff where it's like, no, don't touch that.
Yeah.
Why? But they're
Yeah.
seeing that. And I think it also ties in with some of the other adults in their lives, especially people who are very much relaying messages of, I worked hard for my stuff and I don't want to share with other people. I don't want to do for other people. I don't care about other people. I did my part to get where I need to be. That and that mentality is coming to them from other adults in their lives. And so I have to combat that with, hey, we have some resources. We have the luxury, even though I work really hard and it is hard work being a single parent, I have resources that other people don't have. So making sure to, do things where it's like, let's help other people. We made care packages in November that we are passing out to people we see who are panhandling. Like, look, I don't have any money to give you. Here's a bottle of water and a snack and some clean socks and all these things where it's like, I have the ability to do this for you. So I'm going to share in this way. That's kind of how I've been trying to teach them, like, hey, I am sharing in a way.
Yeah.
It might not be the way that you think it makes sense to share, but here we are sharing.
Yeah. I would think that the only thing that comes up for in our household is our devices. Number one, like so our iPads, our phones, and then the TV.
Yeah.
And then like I shared, I think in a previous episode, my son broke our TV upstairs, so now we don't have that to share.
Yeah.
But that's about the only thing. And food.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. My daughter was like, my kids were always in my food. And
Yes. Like, get out of my
I just
plate.
in my body, like what mothers we know, like we have shared our body.
That
Like
too.
just access to my body. I'm just
yes. I'm
why-
so glad you brought that up. One of my kids at one point said, your body is my body. And I was like, whoa, no, sir. And I'm like, this is a consequence of extended breastfeeding, because now you think that you just are part of me, like an attachment, and no.
My daughter still to this day touches me.
Yes.
And even both of the kids, like I was just standing there, we were waiting for food one day, and they were just walking around me, touching me the whole time. doing like Ring Around the Rosie or something.
Oh no.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, like my body has turned over to these people. So
Yes.
and
Oh,
you have to be like, look, love you.
yes.
You need one more
Yes.
hug before I tell you you can't touch me.
Right. I forgot about that. And that's one thing and that's interesting because that's one thing I've always told my children, you do not have to share. You can decide if you want to hug, kiss,
Right.
whatever. Like I have been driving that home since day one. But when it comes to me, they're just like, I am entitled to touch you all the time. No, you're
Like
not.
this is my daughter all over me. She's
Oh
just
my
like
gosh.
splayed over my body. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh. They're insane. They're crazy people. All these little people are nuts.
Yeah.
So one way I mentioned is, especially with screen time, one way I kind of combat the confusion of, you said this, but you're doing this, is just kind of giving them a play-by-play. Right now I'm working on this, or right now there's an urgent email that I need to check out. So that they understand that while I'm working on keeping these boundaries for myself, sometimes there are exceptions where it's like, I have to do this. I'm not doing this for fun. I'm not doing this to take away time from our family. I'm not doing this because, for any reason other than like, this is an urgent situation. I need to take care of this. When it comes to like the white lies, sometimes I'll explain to them, like, I said this to help them feel better. Or like, here's what I said. My boss said, I want to start doing this, this, and this. And I might have said, that's a great idea, but did you hear what I followed it up with? Also, though, I think we should maybe explore A, B, and C. Like, there are just ways you have to be sort of diplomatic as an adult. And I need you to understand this. And I've tried to explain to them, like, hey, it's a different ball game when you're an adult and your livelihood is counting on these things, or, whatever. Or, there's a mom at my kid's birthday party who I don't particularly care for, and I've never maybe said anything bad about her, but yeah, let's go have coffee sometimes. And the boys will be like, you don't seem very excited actually to hang out with her. And I'm like, you're right. I don't think she's my favorite person, but here's an opportunity for me to maybe learn more about her. Maybe I haven't given her enough of a chance. Maybe I don't know her well enough to make a decision, whatever. So those are kind of ways to sort of combat that confusion a little bit, and same as sharing, like, hey, I'm going to give you an explanation why I'm not going to share this with you.
Yeah.
I have a glass of mommy juice. I'm not sharing this with you because you're not allowed to have this.
Yeah.
And because you put
boundaries.
floaties in my cup all the time. Like, no, I don't want to share with you.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I know with like cussing, it is so one of the things is I have definitely pulled back to some degree.
Yeah.
Because just for the fact of I do now see how much of a sponge they are. And even though my daughter was kind of like, she wasn't saying it all the time or anything like that, but the fact that she was picking it up and then picking it up with context, I knew that I had to, so I really only do it when I've forgotten something, when I've hit my toe, doing certain things that kind of, like you said, there's not a better word that is just front of mind, basically.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like I said, I don't shame them for saying it, like I said, my daughter, my husband is not a big fan of it. So I do try to be like, hey, that's not something you want to do in front of your dad, because he just doesn't doesn't cuss. So he is a lot less tolerant of it than I am.
Yeah.
And then just, like I said, last night even, I was just like, here are some other words that you can use to get your point across, to say to yourself, because I don't want to hear something like that, from the teacher, like, hey, she said this word.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
So those are ways that I even really just try to get around the cussing thing.
Sure. Yeah. And I think we talk about this a lot on this podcast, but giving grace to ourselves and to our children, we are constantly talking about that. And I think even when we are making mistakes where it's like, my kids are seeing me do something that contradicts everything I'm teaching them, acknowledging that in front of them and like owning up to it, I think goes a long way with them. Like, hey, mom knows that this is not the choice she should be making. She's owning up to it in front of us so that we know that she knows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's helping give them, an understanding of what it means to be an adult versus a
Yeah.
kid, because
Mhm.
that's the other thing that I think it also sends a message of, is that there are certain adult things that happen and there's certain things that are appropriate for kids.
Sure.
And when you get to be an adult, the doors will open for you to do more things that you care
Sure.
about.
Sure.
Or maybe not, because now as a kid, you've learned all these different alternative methods of how to deal, that
Yeah.
maybe you won't have to do the things that you've seen your mom do. And it gives
Sure.
you choices, I think,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Also, one other thing is being vocal about the potential consequences of those choices.
Oh, for
You
sure.
mentioned sweets. Like, okay, yes, I'm doing this. I'm also accepting that this might not pan out too good for me. Like, this might not.
Yeah.
This might give me a cavity. But
Yeah.
I'm an adult and I can choose that. And I've explained to my kids some of the consequences that you might get
Yes.
from things then affect me. My consequences mainly affect me.
Exactly. Like,
So if I
walk
put
every
on
day.
right, exactly. Like, oh, well, the consequence is now I have to make that extra step to pay attention to other things. Or,
Yes.
I could get a cavity. Or, yes, I'm looking at my phone, but, I might get a headache, and that's a consequence in itself.
Yeah.
If I say the wrong words, if I cuss at somebody who it is not going to go over very well, I have to deal with that consequence. So I have to make those choices for myself. Just relaying the fact that, like, when you become an adult, you can do these things, understand the consequences that come with them. It is my job right now as your parent to try to help you avoid consequences.
That's right.
That's my job.
What did I say in the last one? I was like, you don't live with your choices, you live with your consequences.
Amen. Yes. Yeah. I did
So-
actually say that to one of my kids
Did
once,
you?
my oldest, since he's the one who could understand it the most. I did say that to him, and he was just like, okay. Like, he thought about it. He didn't want to admit that I was making some sense. So he's just like,
He was like, "Ooh, that
right.
was good."
He's like, okay. Anyway.
Really trying to hold me accountable here.
I love it. Well, as
Right.
always, thank you so much, Tiffany. It is always a blast
Definitely.
chatting with you, and I feel like we're nailing it.
Yes, yes. And I just tell everybody, be your best self. I mean, that's all we're trying to do in this
Yes,
world. So
absolutely.
just be your best self.
Yes. All right.
Excellent.
Thank you. As always, so much fun to chat with Tiffany. She and I have entirely too much fun whenever we chat with each other, and she's a great co-host. So hopefully you'll be seeing more of her as this season continues. For my house blend this week, I am going to spotlight a post from Sean Watson. It is called Road Tripping: Fun Texas Spring Break Destinations for Houston Families. This is a guide update, and she is going to share with us some hot spots for 2024 spring break. If you have not mapped out what your spring break is going to look like and you're sort of panicking, Sean has some great ideas for how to fill up your time with your kiddos home. I know a lot of us don't fully look forward to breaks with our kids because we don't know how to keep them busy and juggling stuff that we have to get done, work stuff, all of our obligations, but then also make fun and memories for our kids. It can be really overwhelming. So Sean's guide is a great go-to for figuring out how to keep those kids busy. Let's go ahead and wrap up with a see you later caffeinator for this week. I found this little snippet from craniumacademy.com. They have a blog there, and it focuses on the concept of do as I say, not as I do. And it says that this is a typical parenting phrase that signals children not to copy negative behaviors that they are about to witness. And some parents believe that simply telling their children what to do is enough to ensure positive development, but that's not really the case. Like Tiffany and I discussed, we are our children's first teachers, and they are watching everything we do. While it makes sense to explain to them the things we want for them, our actions have to match. So this post from Cranium Academy does kind of explain how important it is to emulate those things that you're teaching your children, and also exploring that there are exceptions sometimes. So that isn't going to cause like conflict in your children's mind. Like, mom says I need to do this, but she's also doing that instead. So what's the deal? So open communication is always super important, and just remembering that your kids are always watching. And as much as we want them to be productive, healthy, happy adults as they grow up, we also have to teach them that, hey, I don't always do my best, and I acknowledge that. I'm trying. We're good. Thanks so much for joining another episode of the Cold Coffee Club. And
You've been listening to the Cold Coffee Club, brought to you by Houston Moms. We wish you a fabulous week with your families and look forward to sharing many more cups of cold coffee with you.